Yeah, okay. Some unreadable dinner party stats. I always think it's good to walk away with a conference with something useful, like not something that you're going to use in your work, but something actually useful that you can bring up like at a dinner party. So I've got some stats for you guys on digital use. So one of them that you can't read, I don't think, very clearly there is really about a split in terms of our media consumption and how that's changing over time. So in September 2010, the big one to look at there is, in the red, is the digital media use was, I think, 25%. And just 4 years later, that's increased up to 34%. As well as our increasing use of digital media, what's interesting to note is the different forms in which that's taking. So these are some stats on the increase of internet, not only just at home, which you can see has been fairly static over time, but now we're accessing this digital media through our handheld devices. So something like a 500% increase since 2008 through to 2013. This one's an indication of small, medium enterprises. So it's not just individuals and consumers, but it's also businesses who are now looking to utilise digital media in the way they do business, and they've been slowly building up over time, but certainly now more and more of them are getting into cloud computing, looking at mobile, making their websites mobile accessible, and also getting into the app area. And this one I think is the weirdest one. Growth in global connected wearable devices, so those watches and Google Glasses and etc. And there's projected to be massive increases over the next thank goodness, over the next few years in those kind of devices. So we're also looking to even more so bring digital media and access into our very immediate and private spaces. Here's some other ones. So OTT communications, which are things like Viber and WhatsApp, have now overtaken our use of SMS. So WhatsApp has 600 million global users. Twitter, Australia is the 4th highest user of Twitter in the world. And here's another stat for you. The country with the highest use per capita is Brunei. Facebook. So we're also using these social medias in different ways to, as well as communicate, also to receive and give information. So 53% of Australians use Facebook in order to do product research. So before they're buying products, they're using Facebook as one of those tools. And 54% of them then share their reviews on Facebook of those products. So massive communication channels being set up for products as well. And again, it's not just on an individual level. LinkedIn, now obviously one of the biggest social media for professionals and businesses, has over 3.5 million users in Australia. And Mike, I'm sorry, I can't accept your LinkedIn invitation. We can't. We don't have it in the government. So that's where the world's heading, and I think bureaucracies in particular, and governments in particular, are often quite a bit away behind the curveball when it comes to adopting technologies. We still love the good old letter, sending out the letter to do our main form of communication. We also, this is at the crazier end of the spectrum. We love pulling together brochures, which we may or may not post out, or we might stick them on an inaccessible part of our website. And of course, from a regulatory perspective, going out into the field is a very important part of what we do, but it's also a very resource-intensive way of regulating and ensuring compliance. And then we have parts in our legislation which lock us into doing things which are perhaps a little bit now outdated, such as must publishing notices in daily newspapers, etc. So that really begins us to the question of, we've got this change in digital media. So how do we best, as an EPA and as a government organisation, use those media to communicate and inform, to educate and engage, and also to direct and best utilise our regulatory and compliance resources. So I'm going to run through 4 very quick and small case studies of how we're doing that in waste in the EPA. So first is the power of using digital media to engage with the community. So I'm sure if you heard Sharon's talk earlier, you'll have heard a lot more interesting things than what I'm going to say. But one of the things we've done is to launch a mobile application to enable the community to report litter events from vehicles. And in the time that it's been up, and I think the last month, we've had 5,000 downloads of the application. There's an additional 250 people downloading that app every day. We're validating 25 litter reports a day, and we're issuing fines from the community at the rate of 15 fines per day. And that's still in the early infancy stages of that program, and particularly as we get more media buy-in and advertising being more widespread, we expect to see that increase. But that digital medium is what's really engaging people into essentially being a quasi-regulatory authority. All of that information can then be mapped. I was going to say apt, but it's going to be then mapped. And we know from a behavioural economics side of things that money doesn't always incentivise people. We love being incentivised on how we compare to other people or how our community compares to other people. And so we do have an opportunity to present information digitally on where litter events are taking place, and use that also to inform further regulatory work. As well as engaging, one of the things that the digital media offers us is also an opportunity to empower. So this is a screenshot from our regional illegal dumping database. And once upon a time, in terms of illegal dumping incidents, that data would have been held in disparate Excel spreadsheets across councils and various land managers and by the EPA. There would have been no sharing of that information. Now what we can do is plot graphically and in an accessible tool where public land managers can access it, information on illegal dumping hotspots by waste type, etc. But also, in terms of the empowerment, we can now also plot in there about what different intervention methods that different public land managers are also using. So what surveillance cameras, fences, lighting, etc. And graphically, in a way, evaluate the effectiveness of those strategies and have that accessible to a whole range of landholders who can log into the database. We're also looking at it off the back of our regulatory changes that we made in November to the waste regulation about how do we actually drive sector-wide change, and particularly for those more problematic waste streams. We did a Tyre campaign at the end of last year where we went to 285 retailers split across the state but mainly concentrated in Sydney. At a guess, that's probably worth around 855 on-the-ground hours from individual officers in getting out there and undertaking a survey with those retailers. But there's about 1,200 plus retailers across the state. So in terms of that campaign, it was quite limited in who we were actually targeting. But what they found from that campaign was that 35% of the retailers didn't know where their waste tyres went to and left that up to the reliable transporters. And what we found on the back of that is that transporters were deliberately misinforming those retailers about where those tyres were going. So even the 65% of retailers who thought they knew where their tyres were going, it's possible that they indeed did not. And we also found out through this campaign that rogue operators in this sector are charging fees and then taking them to illegal waste facilities, which are then prone to environmental issues such as tyres and tyre fires, etc. I don't know what that means. 3 minutes, okay. Um, so in terms of sector-wide change in this space, how do you provide confidence in this case study? How do you provide confidence to those who are paying to do the right things with their tyres? How do you provide an imperative to those who didn't know where it was going and didn't really care, that they have a legal responsibility to ensure it's going to the right place? And how do you guarantee that chain of custody? And we're looking at putting in place an asbestos and tyre monitoring app, which requires generators of tyres to register through an app. If they've got tyres for collection, which transporter is going to pick that up and where they're going to go. That information is all contained within a QR code, and then that can be scanned into a receiving facility. So essentially, digitising a chain of custody to ensure that those tyres are going from a particular generator to a particular lawful end receiving facility. What does that mean for regulators? Well, it means that we can get early alerts on whether tyres haven't shown up at the right place. We can see patterns and hierarchies and relationships between a whole range of stakeholders that we were never able to have good integrity of data on before. And it means we can more effectively target our action using our other regulatory tools. For generators, it's again back to that empowering word. If they can log in and, much like you would your Australia Post parcel, have that ability to track, they've paid the money to ensure that their waste has been taken to a lawful facility, has it actually got there? So putting the onus and responsibility and also power back in the hand of those waste generators. To finish off, we also gained some new powers in the Protection of the Environment Operations Act, which allow us to, by way of notice, install a GPS device onto a waste transporter. And again, this is about improving our compliance action. So we can monitor vehicles for which we do have a GPS. This isn't new technology, but we can set up things like geofences in hotspot illegal dumping areas, in state forests, etc., to highlight when those vehicles are potentially undertaking illegal dumping. For further details, as usual, you can subscribe to our waste update system or contact us at that email address or online. But I guess this is a new frontier for us, and we're very keen to continue exploring with our stakeholders how can we best use digital media to both engage and inform and empower, and also how can we use it internally to increase compliance and regulatory action as well. Thank you.